The dominion of fear hung in the void, its colossal silhouette a stark reminder of the Galactic Empire's unyielding authority. Inside its cavernous execution chamber, the atmosphere was heavy with dread. Rows of spectators, humans and aliens alike, stood in enforced silence. The air vibrated with suppressed fear as Supreme Warden Jarnock, a towering figure clad in ornate blackened armor, strode to the platform. His voice, augmented and cold, echoed through the chamber. Today, Jarnock began, we demonstrate the futility of rebellion. General Simon Jones, the so-called unyielding blade, will serve as an example to all who defy the Empire. A murmur rippled through the crowd, quickly silenced by a single gesture from Jarnock. At the center of the platform, flanked by Imperial guards, stood Jones. His once pristine uniform was torn, his face bruised, yet his posture was raw. The defiance in his eyes betrayed no trace of fear. He scanned the crowd, his gaze locking with Colonel Arthur Wakefield, who had managed to infiltrate the spectator ranks disguised as a merchant. Wakefield gave the faintest of nods, his jaw clenched in helpless frustration. Jones, noticing, smirked faintly before speaking, his voice surprisingly steady. "Fear is the Empire's greatest weapon," Jones said, his words carrying to every corner of the chamber. "But today, you will see that even the sharpest blade can outlast the mightiest hammer." Jarnock sneered. "Bravado will not save you. Begin the execution." A low hum filled the room as the disintegration device activated. Jones was forced to kneel, his arms restrained. The guards stepped back, their duty done. The tension in the room was palpable, every eye fixed on the man who had become the embodiment of resistance. As the energy field enveloped him, Jones tilted his head back, closing his eyes as if surrendering to a higher purpose. In his final moments, he whispered into a hidden communicator embedded in his collar, "Ignite the Phoenix." Then, with a flash of searing light, he was gone, leaving nothing but the faintest trace of ash on the platform. For a moment, silence reigned, oppressive and absolute. Then, Jarnock raised his hands in a grotesque display of triumph. "Let this be a lesson," he proclaimed. "The Empire is eternal. Resistance is meaningless." Back on Earth, thousands of light years away, the words "Ignite the Phoenix" triggered an encrypted protocol buried deep within the network of Earth's remaining military command. A concealed beacon activated in a nondescript bunker, broadcasting a signal to every corner of the globe. Colonel Wakefield had barely returned to Earth when he received the transmission. The encrypted message was unmistakable. Simon Jones had planned for this very moment. Wakefield's hands trembled as he decrypted the data stream. A hologram flickered to life in the dimly lit command center, revealing Jones as he had been before his capture, raw, unyielding. "If you're seeing this," the hologram began, "it means the Empire believes it has won. But victory is far from theirs. Humanity must now unite as never before. The Phoenix Protocols will guide you." The Phoenix Protocols were more than plans. They were Jones's vision for humanity's survival and resurgence. The detailed directives revealed caches of hidden weapons, bases, and alliances Jones had forged in secret. The hologram continued, its tone both inspiring and commanding. "You may doubt this path, but know that my sacrifice is not an end. It is a spark of something greater. Colonel Wakefield, the task falls to you. Unite the factions. Forge a single blade from many. And strike." Wakefield leaned back, the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. He activated a secure line, contacting leaders of Earth's disparate factions. For years, these groups had fought among themselves, their rivalries weakening humanity's chances against the Empire. Now, with Jones's final order, Wakefield intended to change that. The first to answer was Commander Elias Grant, a volatile but brilliant naval officer whose fleet had been grounded by lack of resources and infighting. "You think the others will fall in line?" Grant scoffed, his scarred face filling the screen. "They'll never agree." "They will," Wakefield said firmly, "because they have no choice. Next was Dr. Edward Harker, an idealistic scientist who had long refused to build weapons, dedicating himself instead to defensive technologies. He hesitated before speaking. I didn't agree with Simon's methods, but if this is what it takes to survive, I'm in. As more leaders joined the conference, tension simmered. Old grudges surfaced, threatening to derail the fragile alliance. Wakefield, channeling Jones's charisma and strategic foresight, cut through the discord. The Empire doesn't care about our differences, he said. They see us as one thing, prey. If we fail to unite, we'll prove them right. Over the next weeks, the factions began cooperating. Supplies flowed where they were needed, and skilled engineers worked to awaken the dormant technologies Jones had hidden. Among them was the Nova Lance, a weapon of unparalleled destructive power. Harker, despite his misgivings, oversaw its activation, muttering, "May this never be turned against us." As the first unified fleet of Earth took shape, Wakefield stood on the bridge of the newly recommissioned flagship, Roar. He gazed out at the stars, his thoughts lingering on Jones. He could still hear his mentor's voice. "Never yield, Arthur. Not to fear, not to doubt." The Empire had intended to extinguish hope by executing Simon Jones. Instead, they had lit the flame of humanity's resurgence. Earth's leaders, though wary of the battles ahead, found themselves driven by a singular purpose: to honor the man who had sacrificed everything for their chance to fight back. The stage was set, the players assembled. The Phoenix had risen, and its fire would not be quenched. The dim hum of the Roar's engines filled the command deck as Colonel Arthur Wakefield stood at the central console, his fingers tracing the holographic display of the galaxy map. Dotted lines marked key Imperial outposts, while pulsating icons indicated the locations of humanity's hidden weapons caches. Around him, the bridge crew operated with a newfound sense of purpose, their movements sharp and deliberate. Wakefield's voice cut through the tense atmosphere. "The time for defense is over," he said, addressing his assembled officers. "We strike now, or we lose everything." Commander Elias Grant, standing beside him, leaned against the console, his sharp features twisted in a smirk. "Bold words, Colonel. Let's hope the rest of the galaxy is as eager to gamble as you are." Wakefield turned to Grant, his gaze unyielding. "It's not a gamble, Commander. Jones didn't prepare us to sit idle. Every weapon, every strategy he left us is a tool to break the Empire's grip. It's time we used them." The first operation was codenamed Spearhead, humanity's newly unified fleet. Though still modest compared to the Empire's armadas, moved with precision. At its heart was the Roar, flanked by a formation of stealth frigates equipped with experimental cloaking technology. Their target, an Imperial supply depot on the planet Eridon 4. Wakefield watched the tactical feed as the fleet approached the depot. The stealth frigates vanished into the inky blackness of space, their presence detectable only by faint energy signatures. On board one of the frigates was Captain Malcolm Price, a grizzled veteran who had once been skeptical of uniting under Wakefield's leadership. "Now!" Price's voice crackled over the comms. "Colonel, the Nova Lance is online. I assume you want to make an impression." Wakefield allowed himself a small smile. "Let's show them what happens when you corner humanity." From the Roar, Wakefield issued the command. The Nova Lance, a sleek, silver cannon concealed within the ship's hull, emerged and charged with a low, resonant hum. In an instant, a beam of blinding energy lanced through the void, slicing cleanly through the depot's primary defense towers. The resulting explosion illuminated the fleet, drawing cheers from the crew. The Empire, caught off guard by the ferocity of the attack, scrambled to respond. Waves of Imperial fighters launched from the depot's hangars, only to find themselves intercepted by Grant's squadron of nimble interceptors. Grant's voice was a steady, commanding presence over the comms. "Keep them boxed in. No one leaves this system alive." Meanwhile, on the ground, Wakefield had deployed the first wave of soldiers outfitted with adaptive exosuits. These suits, designed using Jones's research, enhanced the wearer's strength, speed, and reflexes. Lieutenant Daniel Reeve, a young but promising officer, led the charge into the depot's command center. Reeve's team moved with mechanical precision, neutralizing resistance with brutal efficiency. "Colonel," Reeve's voice crackled over the comm, "the depot is ours. Their remaining forces are surrendering." Wakefield nodded. "Good work, Lieutenant. Secure the supplies and prepare for extraction." The success of Spearhead sent shockwaves through the Empire. Reports of humanity's newfound capabilities reached the Imperial capital, where Supreme Warden Jarnock convened an emergency council. The Empire's inner circle, a collection of ambitious governors and cold strategists, bickered over the best course of action. Jarnock, his expression unreadable, silenced them with a single gesture. "This defiance," Jarnock began, his voice measured, "is more than an act of desperation. It is calculated. They are using weapons we have not seen before. Jones's death was meant to extinguish hope, yet it has made them bold. We must respond in kind." As the Empire deliberated, humanity pressed its advantage. Operation Spearhead was followed by a series of coordinated strikes, each more daring than the last. Hidden Imperial outposts fell in rapid succession, their resources seized and their communications disrupted. Yet the true turning point came when humanity's fleet intercepted a classified transmission. The transmission, heavily encrypted, revealed the location of the Imperial dreadnought Dominatus, a ship rumored to carry experimental technology capable of devastating entire planets. Wakefield immediately recognized the significance of the opportunity. "We can't let them deploy that ship," he said during the strategy briefing. "If they unleash the Dominatus, it's over." Grant leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. "So what's the plan?" "We hit it head-on and hope for the best." Wakefield shook his head. "No, we lure it out. The roar will act as bait, drawing the Dominatus into a trap. Commander Grant, your squadron will flank them, while Captain Price's stealth frigates disable their engines. Dr. Harker, you'll oversee the deployment of the Nova Lance." Dr. Edward Harker, who had largely remained silent during the War Council, spoke up. "The Nova Lance wasn't designed for this kind of sustained use. If it overloads—" "We don't have the luxury of caution," Wakefield interrupted. "This is our best shot." The operation, codenamed Ironclad, began with the roar broadcasting its location near the gas giant Corvallis. As expected, the Dominatus arrived, its massive form emerging from hyperspace like a beast of legend. Its weapons immediately targeted the roar, unleashing a volley of plasma bolts. Wakefield's crew worked with surgical precision, evading the initial salvo. At the same time, Price's stealth frigates moved into position, their cloaking technology keeping them undetected. When the order came, they fired a concentrated barrage at the Dominatus's engines, crippling its maneuverability. "Now!" Dr. Harker, Wakefield commanded. Harker, operating from a remote station, initiated the Nova Lance's firing sequence. The weapon charged, its energy output straining the roar systems. Just as the Dominatus prepared to retaliate, the Nova Lance unleashed its devastating beam. The dreadnought's shields buckled under the assault, its hull rupturing in a cascade of explosions. The destruction of the Dominatus was a decisive blow to the Empire. Yet Wakefield knew the war was far from over. The Empire would not falter easily, and humanity's newfound strength had painted a target on them. As the fleet regrouped, Wakefield stood alone on the bridge, gazing at the debris field where the Dominatus had once loomed. He thought of Simon Jones, whose sacrifice had set these events in motion. Despite the victories, Wakefield felt the weight of what lay ahead. "Jones," he muttered, "I hope you were right." The sense of triumph was tempered by the knowledge that the Empire would retaliate with overwhelming force. Humanity's offensive had drawn blood, but the war was far from won. And somewhere, in the shadows of the galaxy, the seeds of a larger, more dangerous conflict were already taking root. The stillness of deep space was shattered as the Imperial fleet emerged from hyperspace, their formation vast and unyielding. At its head was the Eviscerator, a warship unlike any humanity had faced before, bristling with weapons and shielded by experimental energy barriers. Supreme Warden Jarnock stood on the bridge, his expression cold and predatory. "They've grown bold," Jarnock said to his officers, his voice like the grinding of stone. "But their defiance ends here. Deploy the incinerators. Leave no survivors." The order was given, and the fleet began its systematic onslaught. Imperial forces targeted humanity's outposts with ruthless precision, cutting off supply lines and obliterating key installations. Planets that had harbored resistance fighters were bombarded from orbit, their surfaces scorched and lifeless. The Empire was no longer attempting to subdue. It sought to annihilate. On board the Roar, Colonel Arthur Wakefield stood before a room of grim-faced commanders. A holographic map displayed the carnage unfolding across the galaxy. Reports streamed in, entire fleets lost, cities reduced to ash. Wakefield's jaw tightened as he processed the enormity of the Empire's retaliation. "They're trying to break us," Wakefield said, his voice steady despite the chaos. "This isn't just a counterattack. It's a message. They want us to kneel." Commander Elias Grant, his face lined with exhaustion, but his tone sharp as ever, scoffed. "And here I thought we were the ones making statements. They've turned the tables, Colonel. What's the play now?" Wakefield hesitated for a moment, his mind racing. Then, as if an answer, a notification blinked on the console. The Phoenix protocols had updated, a final directive encrypted and sealed until now. The room fell silent as Wakefield accessed a file. A familiar voice filled the air, calm and unwavering. It was Simon Jones. "If you're hearing this, it means the Empire has escalated beyond what we anticipated." The recording began. "And that's why I left one last contingency. A part of me, designed to guide you when the situation seemed impossible." Wakefield's eyes widened as the hologram morphed, shifting from a recorded message to a fully interactive AI. The figure of Simon Jones materialized, its movements fluid and lifelike. The AI's gaze swept the room, and when it spoke, it carried the weight of Jones's strategic brilliance. "I am the Blade Eternal," the AI declared, "a culmination of my knowledge, strategies, and instincts. Together, we will finish what I started." The room erupted into murmurs, a mix of awe and unease. Dr. Edward Harker, who had remained silent until now, stepped forward. This is unprecedented. You replicated your mind? Jones, this goes beyond the bounds of ethics." The AI turned to Harker, its expression unreadable. "Ethics have their place, Doctor, but survival demanded otherwise. If humanity is to endure, we cannot afford hesitation." Wakefield silenced the room with a raised hand. "We don't have time to debate this. The Empire is closing in. Blade Eternal, what's our next move?" The AI projected a detailed map of the galaxy, highlighting a system deep within uncharted space. "Here lies a stronghold the Empire believes forgotten, a prison for their most dangerous enemies. Among them are leaders of alien species who once defied the Empire. If we free them, we gain allies. If we fail, we lose everything." Commander Grant folded his arms. "Sounds suicidal. But then again, that's what we do best." The operation, codenamed Liberation Storm, required flawless execution. Humanity's fleet, battered but unbroken, moved toward the system under the AI's guidance. The stronghold was heavily fortified, its defenses designed to repel even the most determined assault. As the fleet arrived, the Empire's response was immediate. Waves of fighters poured from the station, their formations disciplined and lethal. Wakefield issued orders with calm precision, his trust in the Blade Eternal absolute. "Focus fire on their shield generators," Wakefield commanded. "Grant, keep their interceptors busy. Price, prepare the ground team." Captain Malcolm Price, leading the ground assault, landed his team near the stronghold's main gate. The air was thick with smoke and the acrid stench of ionized metal. Price's voice was steady as he addressed the soldiers. This is for every world they've burned. No hesitation, no mercy. Let's move. The battle was brutal. Imperial troops, equipped with advanced combat drones, fought fiercely to maintain control. Yet Price's forces pressed on, their exocets giving them the edge they needed to push through the stronghold's defenses. Inside the station, Lieutenant Daniel Reeve led a smaller team to the detention blocks. They moved through dimly lit corridors, their footsteps echoing against the cold metal walls. Reeve's pulse quickened as they reached the cell containing the first prisoner, Kaler Vryn, a towering alien warrior with skin like polished obsidian. "Who are you?" Vryn growled, his voice resonating with suspicion. Reeve lowered his weapon. "Allies, we're here to free you and anyone willing to fight." One by one, the cells were opened and the prisoners emerged. Among them were strategists, scientists, and warriors from species long thought crushed by the Empire. Their initial distrust melted as the Blade Eternal appeared via hologram, its voice commanding and roar. "The Empire fears you because they know your strength," it said. "Join us, and together we will dismantle their tyranny." The alien leaders exchanged glances before nodding in agreement. Vryn stepped forward, towering over Reeve. "We will fight. Let us." As the ground team extracted the prisoners, the battle in space reached a critical point. The roar, shields failing, faced off against the Eviscerator. Wakefield stood firm on the bridge, his eyes locked on the tactical display. "Blade Eternal, we're running out of time," he said. The AI's response was immediate. "Prepare the Nova Lance. We'll overload their core." Dr. Harker hesitated, his fingers hovering over the controls. "If the lance overheats, it'll take us with it." Wakefield met his gaze. "Do it." The Nova Lance fired, its energy beam piercing the Eviscerator's shields and striking its core. The enemy ship erupted in a cascade of fire, its destruction a blinding testament to humanity's resilience. As the fleet regrouped and the liberated prisoners boarded their ships, Wakefield allowed himself a moment of relief. The battle had been won, but the war was far from over. The Empire would not rest, and neither could they. On the bridge, the Blade Eternal's hologram flickered beside Wakefield. "This is only the beginning," it said. "The Empire will come for us with everything they have. But now we have allies and a chance." Wakefield nodded, his resolve hardening. "Then we'll finish what you started. No retreat. No surrender." In the distance, the remnants of the Imperial fleet retreated, their once overwhelming presence diminished. Yet Wakefield knew the next confrontation would be even more fierce. The Blade Eternal, a shadow of Jones's indomitable will, remained a guiding light for humanity's darkest hours. And as the stars stretched endlessly before them, one truth burned brighter than ever: humanity would never yield. The void of space was unervingly quiet as humanity's combined fleet gathered for what would be their final stand. The stars seemed distant, cold witnesses to the culmination of years of suffering and defiance. Colonel Arthur Wakefield stood on the bridge of the roar, his hands gripping the console tightly as he scanned the holographic display before him. The fleet, now bolstered by ships from liberated alien species, formed an intricate web of firepower and unity. This was the moment they had prepared for, the strike at the heart of the Galactic Empire. "The Empire's flagship is here," the Blade Eternal announced, its holographic form appearing beside Wakefield. Its voice was calm, unyielding, a reflection of the man it had been modeled after, the Sovereign Ascendant. "It carries the full weight of their arsenal and command structure. Destroy it, and we shatter the Empire's spine." Wakefield nodded, his jaw set. "And if we fail?" The AI turned to him, its gaze unwavering. "Failure is not an option. Simon Jones didn't sacrifice himself for us to falter here." Commander Elias Grant leaned against the console, his usual smirk replaced by a grim determination. "So, It's us against the gods. Sounds about right. Let's give them hell. As the Empire's fleet emerged from hyperspace, the sheer scale of their forces sent a ripple of unease through the Allied ships. The Sovereign Ascendant was a leviathan, its silhouette blotting out the stars. It was flanked by dreadnoughts and carriers, their hulls gleaming with the cold precision of Imperial engineering. Wakefield's voice rang out across the comms. All ships, hold formation. Remember, this isn't just our fight. We're here for every world they've crushed, every life they've stolen. Today, we end this. The battle began with a deafening roar. The Allied fleet surged forward, their weapons lighting up the darkness. Swarms of Imperial fighters met them, the void erupting in a chaotic ballet of destruction. On the roar, Dr. Edward Harker monitored the Nova Lance, his fingers dancing over the controls. Power levels are stable for now, Harker reported, but one sustained shot could overload the core. We'll make it count, Wakefield replied. Amidst the chaos, Captain Malcolm Price led a contingent of boarding ships toward the Sovereign Ascendant. His team was composed of the fiercest soldiers humanity and their new allies could offer, their resolve unshaken despite the odds. Price's voice crackled over the comms. Colonel, we'll hit their command center and disable their shields. You just make sure we've got a way out. Understood, Wakefield replied. Good luck, Captain. As Price's team breached the flagship's hull, the resistance was immediate. Imperial soldiers, clad in advanced armor, fought with brutal efficiency. Price's team pushed forward, their exosuits enhancing their strength and reflexes. Among them was Lieutenant Daniel Reeve, whose determination had only grown since their early victories. Reeve covered Price's flank as they moved through the labyrinthine corridors. They're throwing everything at us, Reeve grunted, firing a burst of plasma rounds at an advancing squad. We need to move faster. We will, Price said, his tone steady. Keep your head down and your aim true. Meanwhile, on the roar, the Blade Eternal coordinated the fleet's movements with precision. Alien vessels, each with unique capabilities, worked in tandem with human ships, their unity a testament to the strength forged through shared suffering. Commander Grant, leading the fighter squadrons, barked orders over the comms. Keep them pinned down. We need to buy the ground teams more time. The Sovereign Ascendant retaliated with devastating force, its main cannons tearing through Allied ships. The roar shuddered as it absorbed a glancing blow, alarms blaring across the bridge. Harker's voice was tense as he reported the damage. Shields at 40%. We can't take another hit like that. Then we won't, Wakefield said. Blade Eternal. What's the play? The AI's holographic form flickered as it processed the unfolding chaos. Price's team is nearing the shield generator. Once they disable it, we'll have a window to strike. But the Nova Lance must hit the core directly. Anything less will be insufficient. Price and his team reached the shield generator, a massive structure pulsing with energy. As they planted charges around its base, an Imperial commander appeared, flanked by heavily armed guards. The commander's voice was cold, mocking. You think this will change anything? You're insects before the Empire. Price stepped forward, his weapon raised. Insects can bring down giants. Let's see how you fare. The ensuing firefight was brutal, but Price's team fought with unmatched ferocity. Reeve, wounded but determined, managed to detonate the charges, sending a shockwave through the flagship. The shield generator crumbled, and the Sovereign Ascendant's defenses faltered. Shields are down! Price shouted into the comms. Take the shot! On the roar, Harker activated the Nova Lance, its energy output pushing the ship to its limits. Wakefield stood firm, his gaze locked on the flagship. Fire! The beam erupted from the roar, a blinding lance of energy that pierced the Sovereign Ascendant's core. The flagship convulsed as explosions rippled through its structure, its massive frame beginning to collapse. The Allied fleet pressed their advantage, targeting the remaining Imperial ships with renewed ferocity. As the Sovereign Ascendant disintegrated, Supreme Warden Jarnock appeared on the comms, his face twisted with rage. You think this changes anything? The Empire is eternal. Wakefield met his gaze, his voice unwavering. Nothing is eternal. Not even you. The transmission cut off as the flagship was consumed by fire. The Imperial fleet, leaderless and demoralized, began to retreat. Cheers erupted across the Allied ships, their victory undeniable. But on the roar, Wakefield stood in silence, his gaze fixed on the wreckage. The Blade Eternal appeared beside him, its holographic form flickering. You've done what many thought impossible, the AI said. But the fight isn't over. The Empire's remnants will regroup. You must remain vigilant. Wakefield nodded. We will, and we'll rebuild, not just for humanity, but for everyone who stood with us. As the fleet began its journey home, the stars seemed brighter, their light a beacon of hope. Simon Jones's legacy, carried forward by the Blade Eternal, had turned despair into triumph. Humanity, united and unyielding, had proven that even the mightiest empires could fall. And as they prepared for the challenges ahead, one truth burned in their hearts. They would never yield again.